Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg.
And this is Chris Jackson. And Fred and I were just talking about how remarkably similar reliability engineering and good marketing is.
Now, I just heard a bunch of phones get disconnected. No, really, it is. It's what brought this to my mind is that when I've seen people or somebody will send me their presentation and they're like a new consultant or they are doing a evening meeting presentation or whatever, and they want me to take a quick look at it. And I says, why are you spending 5 minutes of your 20 minutes talking about what kind of building you work out of and how expensive your phone is and that, you always fly first class? Really don't care. How about you actually talk about the topic you came here to talk about? You're in the building. Your resume doesn't matter anymore. Go away. Stop that. You're here to add value. And I don't know where that sparked for you, Chris, that's like marketing. But
well, I mean, it's just for me, it's been a slow evolution in terms of how I try to explain the topics to not only students, but people who need to listen to my reliability engineering nonsense. But it picked up when I was speaking to my wife, who's a videographer and is often tasked with creating ad campaigns or promotional videos for different clients. And of course, she has many stories where she has problems with clients who essentially say, we want you to create a marketing video. And you go, that's fantastic. Let me go and do that. And they say, well, it's got to have this, and this, and this, and this, and this in it. And it has to have this logo. You have to have our vision and everything else.
In 30 seconds.
Right. And
then what did you need me for? Yeah.
And one of the things I was just saying to her, I said, look, the challenge you're facing is actually very similar to the challenge I face and people who I work with face when it comes to trying to get the message across. And people, for example, what's the call to action? Call to action is like a buzzword that people think, yeah, you have to have a call to action. And I was reading some of the stuff that my wife got last night. And one of the things that client was insisting was we need to have a call to action. So at the end, make sure you include, please call ... or email ... to at this particular address or something like that. And I said, that's not a call to action. That's just a call. Where's the action bit? If it's not, it needs to be something along the lines of, if you need help finding that perfect job, call this. Or if you need help living independently at home, click on that. It
started here. Come visit us. Or it's, it has to have something that ties into their need or want. And for reliability engineering, we often get, just run all these tests. You'll be fine. You're a reliability engineer. And I remember, I know I've told this story before. I was like, well, no, I'd start talking with the development engineers, design engineers. Oh, no, you're not allowed to talk to them. Okay, well, then this is not going to work. Sorry, I'm not going to.
Right. And some of the techniques I use are tend to be really similar to the marketing piece. And like, for example, again, with my wife last night, we said, well, for each one of these marketing videos, let's describe the person. Not only describe the person, let's personalize this person and give him or her a name and say, okay, well, if this video is intending to try and grab the attention of this person and get them to call you, and this person, let's just say it's someone who's, you're trying to offer community-based or free training to help them get the next job, and also you're going to offer them resume services and again, free career mentors to help them manage job leads and everything else. So it's a wonderful service, a wonderful free service to help people who are struggling. But that's the point. And we came up with a completely fictitious person. We called her Barbara and said, well, Barbara's, if she's going to use these services, if she's going to be the one, she's obviously, one, unemployed, two, has some issues with literacy, math or computer what's the word I'm looking for? Computer skills,
or even just interview skills. Sometimes that's a barrier. You might be the perfect candidate for the job, but don't have you're not confident to answer questions and describe yourself. There's all kinds of reasons for it, but you're saying then the ad should be something that person would recognize. That's me.
Right.
They can help me, kind of thing. Whereas reliability, we often get, well, where's this product going to be used? Oh, everybody's going to use it. Well, I doubt that. Who's going to use it and how? Our use profiles and environmental conditions come from understanding who's this Barbara and how does she go through the world and would interact with our product. And if you don't understand that, you're missing a fourth of the reliability definition.
Right. And I think we just had a conversation where I use characters from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation movie to help flesh out the use case for the smart lock I use in my courses. And,
that just tainted that whole. You've been using that smart lock for years, and I've enjoyed it and all the discussions on it. But now it's tied to National Lampoon. I'm going to be smirking.
Well, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is one of the greatest movies of all time. Everyone knows that. How it didn't win 24 Academy Awards is beyond me. But it's a staple in our house around coming Christmas.
Yeah, no, I agree, but it's just funny. But the idea is valid. Is that you get a personification of instead of doing a bar chart where half our population is along coastal regions and a third is at elevation of this so much and above, and some are in hot humid environments, some are in this environment, and you can do a Pareto breakdown of where your customers for these different features are and so on. All right, great. How many actually use it outside? Well, we don't know that. They just live here. How many times? I remember one time I asked this game company, I was like, how many times does a person push the trigger button to shoot things? And they had no idea. Well, how do you know how do you know what the criteria is of how long this button's supposed to last? How many interactions can you do? Well, we use the vendor spec and it says 1 million cycles. So we test it to 1 million cycles. And I said, do you work for the vendor? Are you trying to prove their data sheet? Is that what you're trying to do? How does your customer actually use it? And let's figure that one out. And there was a way to do it. And they were like, oh, we have to do the customers, not the data sheet? Yeah.
Well, it's just...
And the hard part was these guys intuitively knew that there was, first-time gamers, experienced gamers, and pros. And they all behaved very differently with their product.
Right.
But they didn't know how to quantify it. They hadn't thought that through. Why would that ever be important? And so part of the marketing of that service, the pitch for we need to do this study, was this is why it makes value. It helps us design a better product and make better decisions. And like, oh, okay, I get that. And then we went off and did it. But if you can't connect what you're trying to do to a customer or a use condition or a case like that, it's hard to see how it's important.
Right. And I think one of the best ways to make it feel important is to give that person a name. And so you can have the demographics or 30% coastal, 40% alpine, 50%, office or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But when I use the 3 characters from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation to obviously get the smirk going on Fred, but to actually try and design a good smart lock. Clark, number 1, he is a farmer. He wants his smart lock to be on a barn so his farm hand, his employees can not only safely access, but then secure the barn without having to have keys all across the countryside. And of course, when an employee leaves, he doesn't have to trace him down for a key. He just removes his code. Person number 2, Ellen. She's a homemaker. She wants a smart lock for a domestic setting for our house that she lives on. House that's built on a cul-de-sac. 3, Aunt Bethany. She's an elderly lady who's not an idiot by any stretch, but wants the smart lock to help with accessibility problems, and of course is not as tech savvy as a Generation Z or Generation Z gamer, for example. And if you go through a day in the life of Clark, Ellen, and Aunt Bethany, and then you take all the, let's just say, the most stringent or envelope pushing uses for each one and combine that into a single use case, you've got a really useful it's amazingly useful how effective that combined use case becomes. And so, okay, so this smart lock needs to be used up to 10 times a day, because that's on average how much Clark's going to use that, or Clark's employees going to use that smart lock, and it's more than Ellen's and Aunt Bethany's. Oh, Aunt Bethany, accessibility. So we need to have the let's make sure that the keypads, that the buttons aren't too small, and or the activation forces are workable for an elderly person who doesn't have the same strength she did 40 years ago, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all of a sudden, you got a pretty useful description of how this thing's going to use, and about 24 design ideas ready to go without having to actually do any designing.
Yeah, and I've seen it's like an encyclopedic listing of environmental conditions. Well, it's a high of 40 degrees C and a low of minus 10 and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with that? But connecting it to the day in the life of, right, various, and I call it avatars, to various avatars, then it's easier to remember. You can fill in the blanks because your brain loves stories, and will fill in the rest of that movie for you. What else does that person do? And what do they need? And so, like Aunt Bethany, it might be, well, if she's getting a delivery and they need to get inside, she can give them a temporary code. Let's make that easy. So it's a one-time use code, or, a time frame code, or some other feature that different than giving it to employees, that each one has their own code system for it. But it's a great technique to help visualize and understand and comprehend how your product's going to be used. Or for a marketing campaign, is a great way for people to identify with, oh, that's me. They can help me this way. All right, that's great. They're talking to me, kind of thing. But if you don't understand who they are or who the me is, it's really hard to write a good program for that. And it goes back to those presentations I was talking about. Somebody stands up and says, oh, we've worked in all these industries. We did all this cool stuff. We did all the other thing. If they happen to say, oh, have you worked for HP and we're at Dell, so if you can help them, you can help us, and maybe we'll learn some HP stuff along the way. They have to work too hard to fill in the blanks and the connections and why are you talking to us, kind of thing, versus just saying, all right, here's a series of problems I'm sure that you're experiencing or you may be experiencing. Here's a way I can help you solve these things, which is a completely different way of advertising yourself or promoting yourself than saying, I work in a high-rise building in a big city and therefore I must be important. Okay, so it's like.
Yes, right. I think you're touching on a really important thing. How many times have we gone to a conference and then we listen to someone who's going to give us a revolutionary presentation on something they've talked about, well discovered or used.
Yep.
And instead they start with the obligatory, well, here's my name.
Here's where I went to school.
Here's my post nominals.
Yep.
Oh, my biography is I did this, then I did that, and after that I did something else, then I did something different, and I did 3 other things on the way to me getting here.
Yeah, and then I work at this. Here. I work here, and they did this, and they were started in 1982, and
right
in a garage.
Here's a picture. Here's a picture of their building now. There's a garage. There's a building now, so you can see how awesome we are because we don't work in a garage anymore.
All right, I'm out of time. Any questions?
Yeah, there you go. And so one of the very important things I talk about to my wife is to say, look, these videos is a big difference between saying what you want to say and saying what the person you're talking to needs to hear. And that's really important for business cases as well. I've seen so many reliability engineering business cases, I'll use that term broadly, or essentially an email or a document saying, can we please do this? And essentially it's not a business case. It's just a document where said reliability engineer has journaled stuff they've done. And maybe if you look really hard at the end, they'll say, can we please do this? Can you please, we want to buy a Holt chamber, and off we go. And they spent like most of these 20 pages of NAF explaining, Holt was developed in blah, blah, blah. The H in Holt stands for this, and here is this, as opposed to the bottom line up front. Sir, we would like to purchase a Holt testing chamber for $125,000, fund an ongoing test test technician for $75,000 a year, because we believe that this will save us in the order of $2 to $3 million of warranty costs over the next 10-year period.
Per year.
I mean,
you better go per year, otherwise that gets
per year, whatever it is.
Like, I'm already evaluating your presentation there. But yeah, put the business case right up front and lay it all out. And what's the cost benefit? What's the value? And then fill in the blanks of going, well, what's the connection between buying a chamber and running it, and what does it do? It helps us identify potential failure mechanisms that would occur in the field, and here's studies that support it, and blah blah blah, and you can go off and run it. We bury the lead, I guess is another phrase, way too often. There's things, there's two reasons I think that reliability engineers need to have good friends with somebody in the marketing department. One is they're actually pretty good at understanding customers and what they do day in and day out. That's kind of a big part of their job, is to understand customers' behavior and what motivates them to make purchases and all kinds of other things. But tapping into them and saying, hey, look, I'm a reliability engineer and I need to know where Barbara lives and what she does and how often she would use our product and what's the consequence if the product doesn't work for her. And I also need to know Clark's story too. Here's a different way to... Who's out there that's using it, and can you describe them to us and our team so we can fill in the blanks of make it work for Barbara and Clark and Aunt Bethany. But the other part is the marketing guys, they often get the nicer offices and better donuts. So I think they're doing something different to get their budget. So when you have a proposal that's important, run it past your buddy over lunch, and saying, hey, how does this come across? How can I improve this so that I can influence the behavior of the person holding the purse strings so I get my new halt chamber? And I bet you get some pretty insightful feedback on it, because that's what they do.
Right. Well, I mean, it's absolutely vital to understand. Let's give the decision maker a name. Let's say his name's Greg.
Okay.
Has Greg been burnt because of, aftermarket costs for his product over the last 5 years? Or conversely, is he trying to impress the next higher up with, actually taking stuff seriously or whatever? Because the answer to those questions can really influence what it is you're trying to say. So, hey, Greg, I need you to spend this much money on this, and the benefit for you is going to be a likely reduction in field failures by a good guess is 75%, or
whatever the number is, yeah,
right. And then that's the first sentence, and then the next sentence is you explain what HALT is and what it means. So HALT involves pushing prototypes to and beyond their design limits in order for us to find the weak points, which allow us to design those weak points out of the product early in the design process, saving tons of time and money. Here's a couple of examples. Sort of build a bit of credibility, but you only start building credibility once Greg knows why he's reading past the first sentence.
Yep.
Oh, this could save me a ton of money. Oh, okay.
All right. Or I've often used, because some budgets or some development teams are flush with money and they're not worried about warranty. That's not part of their budget. And so they're looking at, can we ship it on time? Consumer products are notorious for this. Can we launch on time? And if we get delayed a month, that's going to cost them a fortune, and they won't get promoted. They won't get their next project. So it's same argument is what's important to them. And then how does your proposal assist them in achieving their goals? And so you got to understand what Greg wants. And sometimes you just ask them what's important. And then you follow what they actually do. Like a marketing technician is, following customers through the store. It kind of sounds creepy, but is what do they look at and what do they put in their cart? And they might tell you they really like Dove shampoo, but they pick some other brand instead. And it's something is different between what they like and what they do. And so I found that as a hard part, and that's why I would almost always go to a marketing friend and say, hey, I don't quite understand what's behind this. What's the motivation? And they usually have a pretty good story about it. Maybe it's just their marketing wiles. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you. It's doing a named avatar and flushing that out is way more useful in a designer's mind when they're trying to figure out, well, what's the range of temperatures I got to work with? You can give them two numbers and they're not hard and fast. If it's at lower spec is at 10C and somebody goes outside in a colder day and it's at 9C, it doesn't mean the product's going to immediately fail. Our designers aren't that good. Our materials are not that precise. Our systems aren't that, it's not eutectic at pre-certified, pre-selected temperatures. But understanding that it's, they live in North Dakota at the Clark's farm, and yeah, it could get to minus 30. Doesn't much matter if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit at about that point, and it's just cold. Yep. So that smart lock better work. That better not, the expansion of those materials better not be too much.
Right. It's not just the expansion, it's the cyclic stresses as well. So,
yep.
But yeah, all you want to do is start the conversation. I find too many times when you just list demographics, say, 50% will be here and 20% will be there up in the mountains, all of a sudden it just becomes numbers on a spreadsheet.
Yep.
If you give them names, for whatever reason, that just flicks a switch in many people's brains, and they can start living through the experiences of those people, and all of a sudden it's just, I don't know, I think many people actually find it liberating. But again, you need to be good at marketing. There's how many embittered reliability engineers have we come across where they say, no one listens to me?
Yep.
I go, you look at them and some of the stuff they say actually makes sense from a very theoretical perspective in terms of it being largely beneficial. But when you explain it to you, you can tell that they can't explain it to other people. And the only reason I'm getting it, you're getting it, Fred, is because we know what the definition of that word is, or we know where they're going with this idea. But as opposed to actually working out what the decision maker needs to hear, they just focus on what they want to say, and very often become embittered because no one listens to them.
Yeah. Now it reminds me of it was one of these deals where you just really wanted to show off your expertise. So you spotted, it's the PDF of this and it's the derivation of that. And we used the third order cubic transforms on this. And then we did a Box-Cox transformation. And then we pulled the cat out of our hat. And now we have a cool new Weibull plot. And nobody understands what the hell that means. So I'd say, all right, here's a Weibull plot. It's and I wouldn't even say it's an accumulative distribution function. So here it goes from, here's the probability of it failing when it's 1 day old, and here's the probability of failing when it's 10 days old. And they go, oh, that's easy. And so I started, after I did that the first time, I ran into a handful of people. Well, my boss doesn't understand a Weibull plot. Well, stop trying to explain it to him. What are they looking for? How many will last for the duration of our warranty period? Right here, they can follow that line up to this line and go across. They understand basic regression plots. That's basic. Show them how to read it, and that's it. They don't need the derivations. They don't need the formula. They don't need to know if you did a maximum likelihood under the fourth order circuit of the moon, anything. You don't, just, here's the plot. Here's how you read it.
Well, the thing about, Weibull plots is that there's no reason why you can't convert that back into essentially a reliability curve or a failure.
Oh, yeah. It's just any kind of curve. I like straight lines myself that go up to the right, but that's just me.
I do Weibull plotting as often as anyone does. That's probably a big call, but I do a fair bit of it, and I teach a fair bit of it. And I don't always show the Weibull plot to the decision maker. Most of the time I show the Weibull plot is the message I want to purvey is that we have a good fit, so to speak, and the Weibull plot will show if you have a good fit or not. Or if you're using the Weibull plot to explain you can see we transition from wear in or constant hazard rate to wear out. You can see it's right there at 2 years. And then I might explain.
Well, I agree with you. It depends on the story you're trying to tell, what you show and what table and stuff. If somebody just wants the MTBF number, then I brush up my resume and go find somebody else to talk to. But part of it is that the paper, one of the last papers I saw at a conference, a recent paper I saw at a conference was, and then we started with the proof of addition, and then we worked our way up to long division, and then eventually we came up with this novel new idea of calculus, and then there's a history of that, and there's these two guys that competed over whether it's SORs or that or wherever, and that got developed, and now we have computers to do it, and here's the code that goes into the algorithms and doing this stuff, and it's big math and stuff. It's really fun. And finally, here's how we do a plot. And some people in the old days did it by hand, but that's boring. So, and what are you studying? Where's this data come from? What's the conclusion you're drawing from? What's the assumptions you're making? Come on. Who cares? There's a whole series of books. And the books famously start with, and then Alaska was formed with these tectonic plates shoving into each other and creating this mountain range and doing this and this land bridge. And over thousands of years, it did this and this and this and this stuff. And then people showed up. And then the book's about halfway done. And then it got interesting because then there's people doing things. But he has a whole series of these books that start with, and the land was formed with these forces and this history, and the moon shifted this thing out of the way. And it's like, and the whole point is that there's the understanding of the geological formation of an area and how, the way it formed and how it formed and why rivers are where they are and why tides are like they are, shaped how people survived there. And that's the gist of these books he's doing. But they famously start with, and then the earth started to cool off. I'm like, okay, I don't know where this is going, but they ended up being pretty good, pretty fascinating.
Yep. But that's not out.
We don't have that much time. We don't get 600 pages to explain the formation of steel to prove that our spring constant is correct.
That's fine. But I've sat in some of those presentations too, where they go back, to the dawn of time. But it's done for a purpose. It's to engage or get people to wonder about the amazement of the physical world around us, and then
if I'm
you to somebody else.
If I'm in an engineering history symposium, it's great. But if I'm talking to my boss and I got 5 minutes to get $100 million for my new lab, it ain't going to work.
Right. So, but what's your boss, Greg? What's keeping him or her up at night? Is it being on time or on budget? Because you could argue for HALT testing, for example. We're picking on HALT, but
we're not picking on it. We're promoting HALT. You got to use the right words, this marketing thing.
Yeah, okay. But we're not, I suppose when I say picking on it, we're not advocating for HALT to the exclusion of lots of other DFR activities. But I think it's a good example.
Yeah.
You might say, hey, Greg, we want you to spend $200,000 in total on a HALT test chamber because it's going to reduce field failures moving forward by what we think about 75%. That's if Greg's concerned about field failure rates. Or you might say, hey, Greg, we want you to spend $200,000 on a HALT testing chamber because we believe that this will remediate many of the historical delays we see at traditional design milestones, because that might be the thing that is keeping Greg up at night.
Yeah.
You're asking for the same thing, but the why, the hook for the decision maker is very, very different. And by the way, HALT can usually do both of those things. It can really help you plow through your milestones faster than you'd expect because you're preventing problems before they become problems for you to admire in a design review board.
The day before you ship, yeah.
Yep. And of course, because you've fundamentally have a more robust design, your thing's going to last longer, so you're going to have fewer field failures. But you might need to couch it in different ways depending on what it is that Greg is most fascinated by.
Yeah. But it circles all the way back to the story you're talking about with your wife on her project. Is you got to understand that person, that avatar, that individual, and what will resonate with them. And instead of showing a picture of their building, show a picture of a happy client walking out with a new job.
Right.
I'm thinking of you don't show the storefront of a florist shop without anybody going in or out or smiling or anything else. And usually you see it with a person walking out with a great big $500 bouquet, and smiling like, that was the best shop ever. I got this. They don't just show the building and then a close up of the phone number and the address and call us. Okay. Why? It's like, show them coming out of the door.
Right.
I'm sure your wife understands that part of it, but yeah. So anyway, I don't know if we convinced anybody that reliability and engineering and marketing are similar or the same or whatever, but we can learn a lot from marketing skills and techniques, and it's all back to communicating effectively. And that's what marketing people do. They understand the market, they understand the customers, they understand what motivates them. We need to do the same. Our customers might be internal or there might be a client or whatever, but we need to understand that to just create a good product or to get a proposal through for a piece of equipment. So
absolutely, it's here to help. But again, if you more about what you want to say, then it's all about you and you venting or using that brief as a coping mechanism or what have you, as opposed to getting what you need.
Getting things done. Yeah, kind of thing.
Right.
All right. Well, we kind of went over our 30-second budget on this one. So it's, so if anybody's got, some thoughts, what's some good reliability engineering marketing hacks? That might be the right first, or maybe that's too like 2018 or something. I don't know if hacks are still a thing, but anyway, if you've got some ideas on how to improve our lot at doing marketing type stuff, let us know. We're at accendoreliability.com/go/SOR. In a couple ways you can find us there. And then Chris and I are available, as the other hosts are, on LinkedIn and our About pages on Accendo. So, I'm not going to look at ads the same way anymore. I'm going to be trying to figure out what they named their avatars behind it.
Right. Fred, maybe.
I don't know. That would be nice. I'll name them all Fred. Diane will get mad at me. So, anyway, we'll talk to you soon. Take care, Chris.
You too, Fred. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.